Okay. Love letters of great men, inspired by the big screen. I'm going to read the back of these today. And the inside sleeves. See, the back of the Love Letters of Great Men says, "You, my life, my all, farewell. Oh, go on loving me. Never doubt the faithfulest heart of your beloved L. Ever thine, ever mine, ever ours. Ludwig van Beethoven, to his unnamed immortal beloved." Oh. It says, inspired by Sex and the City, the most romantic book ever. Daily Mail, UK. I used to watch Sex and the City whenever I was married to Dave Cunningham, my first husband. Okay. I loved it. Okay, anyway. It's not for children, so you know. Okay. Especially under the age of, we'll say teenage. Anyway. A collection of swoon-worthy love letters from history's greatest men. In the blockbuster hit film Sex and the City, Carrie reads aloud to Big from a book entitled Love Letters of Great Men. After seeing the movie, fans everywhere raced to purchase copies for themselves and their friends. But there was only one problem. The book itself didn't actually exist until now. Culled from the private papers of Ludwig van Beethoven and Lord Byron to Mozart and Mark Twain, here finally are the letters that make cameos in the film, along with many other poignant, funny, tender, and heartbreakingly beautiful declarations of love and longing. Every shade of love is here, from the exquisite eloquence of Oscar Wilde to the sweet devotion of Robert Browning. For some, love is a delicious poison, William Congreve. For others, a nice, soft wife on a sofa with good fire and books and music, Charles Darwin. Absence from a loved one can scorch like the heat of the sun, Henry VIII, or penetrate the depths of one's heart like a cooling rain, Flaubert. Flaubert. Beethoven pines for his immortal beloved, my angel, my all, my one self. Byron guesses that his destiny rests with the young, married Countess Guicciouli. Guicciouli. And Napoleon fiercely declares he has not spent a day without loving his Josephine. Taken together, these heartfelt missives show that the most complicated of feelings, love, has not changed very much over the last 2,000 years. Passion, jealousy, hope, and longing still rule the hearts and minds of men. In an age of emails and text I love yous, this timeless and unique collection reminds us that none of our new modes of communication can compare to the simple joy of sitting down to read a letter from the person they love most, making this a keepsake women everywhere will want to give and receive. Ludwig van Beethoven, Napoleon Bonaparte, Oscar Wilde, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Lord Byron, Gustav Flaubert, Mark Twain, Honor de Balzac, Robert Browning, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Charles Darwin, King Henry VIII, John Keats, Alexander Pope, Lord Nelson, Robert Burns, and more. Ursula Doyle was born in 1967. She lives in London. I laughed because Nathan Hawthorne, I used to, whenever Dave and I lived in North Carolina, I used to know a Nathan. His last name wasn't Hawthorne, but I knew a Jeremy Hawthorne and a Nathan. I forgot his last name. So, yeah. Dear Marines. Okay. Okay. So we're going to read the next letter. So this one's Richard Steele, 1672 through 1729. Richard Steele was a journalist, writer, and politician who, with his friend Joseph Addison, founded the Spectator magazine. Mary Scurlock was his second wife. He met her at the funeral of his first and courted her with a single-minded passion. The second letter here, written 2 weeks before their wedding, is both amusing and touching in Steele's description of himself as a man completely distracted from day-to-day concerns by thoughts of his beloved. Richard and Mary were married in 1707, although their marriage remained secret for some time after that, perhaps for reasons of propriety. This could explain the rather mundane postscripts to the third letter below. Their marriage was famously happy, although sometimes tempestuous, and she remained throughout his life his dear Prue. Steele wrote his wife more than 400 letters, both before and during their marriage. She died in 1718. To Mary Scurlock. Madam, with what language shall I address my lovely fair to acquaint her with the sentiments of a heart she delights to torture? I have not a minute's quiet out of your sight, and when I am with you, you use me with so much distance, that I am still in a state of absence, heightened with a view of the charms which I am denied to approach. In a word, you must give me either a fan, a mask, or a glove you have worn, or I cannot live. Otherwise, you must expect that I'll kiss your hand, or when I next sit by you, steal your handkerchief. You yourself are too great a bounty to be secured at once. Therefore, I must be prepared by degrees, lest the mighty gift distract me with joy. Dear Miss Scurlock, I am tired with calling you by that name. Therefore, say the day in which you will take that of, Madam, your most obedient, most devoted, most humble servant, Rich Steele. August 1707, 2 weeks before their wedding. Madam, it is the hardest thing in the world to be in love and yet attend to business. As for me, all who speak to me find me out, and I must lock myself up, or other people will do it for me. A gentleman asked me this morning, what news from Lisbon? And I answered, she is exquisitely handsome. Another desired to know when I had last been at Hampton Court. I replied, it will be on Tuesday, come Sennicht, SE'Nniht. Prithee or Prythee, Prythee. Allow me at least to kiss your hand before that day, that my mind may be in some composure. O love, 1,000 torments dwell about me, yet who would live to live without thee? Methinks I could write a volume to you, but all the language on earth would fail in saying how much and with what disinterested passion, I am ever yours. Rich Steele. Whew. Almost makes you want to cry, doesn't it? Whew. Okay. Okay. Love Letters of Great Women. Catherine of Aragon, 1485-1536. No idea if I've read it. Did I read this one already? I think I might have. Okay, here. Let's see. Here, I'll read this one. Or we'll read Anne Boleyn's. Anne Boleyn, 1500 through 36. Anne Boleyn was the daughter of Thomas Boleyn, Earl of Ormond and Elizabeth Howard, the daughter of Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk. Thomas Boleyn was enormously ambitious for his 3 children, of whom Anne was the second, and when at that age of 13 she was offered a position as a lady-in-waiting at the court of Margaret of Austria in Brussels. He saw it as an immiscible opportunity. Margaret's was among the most prestigious courts of Europe, and would equip Anne for the ultimate prize, a place at the court of Catherine of Aragon. But shortly after her arrival in Brussels, the diplomatic situation changed and Anne was moved to France, where she entered the service of Claude the Queen. The two became close, and Anne acquired a polish and glamour that was immediately apparent when she returned to the English court in 1521. Excuse me. Accomplished, tasteful, witty, and beautiful, dressed, she was absolutely unlike her contemporaries. The next step for Anne was marriage, but several avenues of inquiry came to nothing, possibly because in her father's eyes the suitors on offer were insufficiently grand. And then in 1526 or thereabouts, Anne caught the eye of Henry VIII. The king was ready for a new mistress, having recently dispensed with the services of Mary, Anne's sister. But it so happened that the vacancy coincided with Henry's growing conviction, in the absence of a male heir, that his marriage to Catherine had never been valid. The annulment of Henry and Catherine's marriage and his subsequent marriage to Anne played out over the next 6 years. The political and religious fallout was huge, and led ultimately to Henry's break with Rome and the establishment of the Church of England. The couple were finally married in January 1533, when Anne was just pregnant. Princess Elizabeth was born on 7 September. It was not a disaster for Anne that her first child was a girl. She was still young, but a miscarriage in August 1534 did not augur well, and she did not conceive again until the autumn of 1535. In January 1536, Catherine died, which came as a relief to Henry and Anne, who knew how much support she and her daughter Mary retained in the country at large. This relief was short-lived, as Anne had another miscarriage at the end of the same month. Still, the situation might have been salvageable had it not been for Anne's falling out with the Lord Chancellor Thomas Cromwell, previously a key ally, and for important diplomatic negotiations being scuppered by Henry's insistence that powerful European monarchs recognized Anne as his lawful wife. Anne had to go, and Thomas Cromwell arranged it. A mere divorce would not suffice. Anne and her faction had to be permanently dispatched. So Cromwell cooked up a selection of terrible charges, accusing her not only of incestuous relations with her brother George, but adultery with 4 other men of her circle. All were arrested and taken to the Tower. After trials of non-existent legality, George Boleyn and his co-accused were executed on 17 May 1536. And that afternoon, the Archbishop of Canterbury declared Anne and Henry's marriage null and void on the grounds of Henry's previous association with Mary Boleyn, which rather begs the question of how an unmarried Anne managed to commit the alleged adultery. On 19 May, Anne was executed on Tower Green by a swordsman brought over from France in order to spare her the axe. It was less than 6 months since the death of Catherine of Aragon. On 30 May, Henry married Jane Seymour, one of Anne's ladies-in-waiting. The letter below, dated 6 May, exists only as a copy, and so its authenticity has not been established. Okay, the letter. To Henry VIII, 6 May, 1536. Sir, your Grace's displeasure and my imprisonment are things so strange unto me, and what to write or what to excuse I am altogether ignorant. Whereas you send unto me, willing me to confess a truth, and so to obtain your favor, by such a one whom you know to be my ancient professed enemy, I no sooner received this message by him, than I right conceived your meaning. And if, as you say, confessing a truth indeed may procure my safety, I shall with all willingness and duty perform your command. But let not your Grace ever imagine that your poor wife will ever be brought to acknowledge fault, where not so much as a thought thereof proceeded. And to speak a truth, never prince had wife more loyal in all duty and in all true affection than you have ever found in Anne Boleyn, with which name and place I could willingly have contented myself, if so God and your Grace's pleasure had been pleased. Neither did I at any time so far forget myself in my exaltation, or received queenship, but that I always looked for such an alteration as now I find, for the ground of my preferment being on no surer foundation than your Grace's fancy. The least alteration I knew was fit and sufficient to draw that fancy to some other subject. You have chosen me from a low estate to be your queen and companion, far beyond my desert or desire. If then you found me worthy of such honor, good your Grace, let not any light fancy or bad counsel of my enemies withdraw your princely favor from me. Neither let that unworthy stain of a disloyal heart towards your Grace ever cast so foul a blot on your most dutiful wife and the infant princess, your daughter. Try me, good king, but let me have a lawful trial, and let not my sworn enemies sit as my accusers and judges.